The Legend of Jigong Chapter 89.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the text opens with a scene that completely shatters, it shatters our modern expectations of how a good guy is actually supposed to behave.
Yeah, it really throws you right into the deep end. We start with a high-speed pursuit involving our primary antagonist for this section, an outlaw named Yunlong.
Right. And Hua Yunlong is not some petty thief. He's a seasoned, highly dangerous criminal.
Very dangerous. And as the chapter opens, he is chasing a woman through a compound right into her room. The narrative tension is just through the roof here.
It really is.
Mm-hmm.
He corners her. But instead of cowering, the woman just simply raises her hand, points past him, and announces, Jigong is here.
So when Hua Yanlong hears that name, he whips his head around absolutely terrified. And there's the monk standing right behind him.
Hua is so scared he physically shudders. A cold sweat breaks out all over his body. His mind suddenly clears, and, he opens his eyes to realize he's sitting entirely alone in a dark forest.
Just completely alone.
Yeah. It's past the second watch of the night. It's maybe around 10 or 11 p.m. The sky is full of stars. The woman, the room, the monk. None of it was real.
And the text explicitly identifies this as a Nanki dream.
A Nanki dream, right. Can you explain that a bit for the listener?
Sure. So, in Chinese literary tradition, a Nanki dream refers to a profoundly realistic illusion. The dreamer experiences what feels like an extensive period of time.
With heavy emotional stakes, right?
Exactly. Life or death consequences. Only to wake up and realize it was a fleeting, magically induced fantasy. It forces the subject to confront their own actions in a vacuum of sheer terror.
It's like that visceral sensation of waking up from a falling dream, where your heart is just hammering against your ribs and your brain takes a few seconds to reboot and figure out what reality actually is.
That's a perfect comparison, but the crucial detail here is the mechanism behind it. This wasn't just a random stress nightmare.
Right. The text states that this was a deliberate, targeted illusion created by Jigong using fox spirit magic.
And the underlying motivation for this magical intervention is what makes it so fascinating from an ethical standpoint.
Because the narrative actually pauses to explain Jigong's operating logic here, doesn't it?
It does. As an enlightened Buddhist monk who has left the secular world behind, his foundational philosophy is compassion. He operates on what the text calls the virtue of sparing lives.
Which, that sounds noble on paper. But wait, I'm trying to map this out practically.
Sure, go ahead.
Because the text tells us Jigong is incredibly powerful. He could have easily captured Hua Yunlong in the physical world.
Right, without a doubt.
He could have just tied him up, dragged him to the local magistrate, and let the government authorities execute or imprison him. But he doesn't do that.
No, he deliberately chooses not to use physical force. Instead, he deploys the sophisticated psychological illusion to, as the text puts it, test the thief's heart.
Test his heart. It's so wild to me.
Right. Jigong wants to see if this terrifying experience will prompt the criminal to change his ways.
Like this moment of profound vulnerability, where Hua Yunlong actually believes he's been caught by a divine force.
Exactly. The monk's ultimate goal is rehabilitation. If he can guide Hua to genuinely repent and turn over a new leaf, he will spare him the brutality of the state's justice system.
It's essentially the ultimate divinely powered scared straight program.
That's exactly what it is.
Like, imagine a modern judge deciding that instead of sending a violent repeat offender to a maximum security prison, they're going to strap them into a hyper-realistic virtual reality simulator.
Right, forcing them to live through the absolute worst-case scenario of their actions.
Yeah, feeling the sheer terror of being caught, just to see if it triggers a moral awakening. It's a closed-loop moral simulator. No one actually gets hurt in the simulation.
And the psychological impact is intended to be completely transformative. It's a test of the subject's baseline humanity.
But I have to push back hard on Jigong's methodology here. I really do.
Oh, let's hear it.
I just have to ask, does this actually work? Or is it a massive ethical blind spot? Because let's look at the mechanics of what happens the literal second Hua Yunlong wakes up.
Okay, let's look at it.
He's terrified. He's sweating. He realizes he's alone in the woods. He stands up to get his bearings. He takes a few steps. He sees a shadow move in the brush in front of him. And what does he do?
He definitely doesn't drop to his knees and pray.
No. He instantly, reflexively draws his lethal weapon.
The text is very clear on that. There is zero hesitation. The blade is out before his conscious mind has even processed what the shadow actually is.
So if Hua Yunlong wakes up from this profound divine intervention and his immediate unthinking muscle reflex is lethal violence, against an unidentified shadow in the dark. I mean, isn't Jigong's so-called compassion actually a massive public liability?
You're saying he's making things worse?
Yeah. By playing these virtual reality mind games and leaving this hardened killer wandering around in a public forest instead of locking him in a cell, isn't the monk inadvertently endangering every innocent person in the area? Compassion for the wolf is cruelty to the sheep,
Yeah,
right?
so it's a great point. And the narrative itself actually seems to share your exact skepticism.
Really? So it knows this is a bad idea.
Yeah, it doesn't present Jigong's compassion as a flawless, infallible strategy. Instead, it juxtaposes the monk's high-minded spiritual idealism against a profound, almost biting cynicism about human nature.
That makes so much sense.
The narrator explicitly steps in and notes, who would have thought that the thief, even in a dream, would still not change his evil habits?
That's a brilliant admission by the text. It's basically the author saying, yeah, we tried the enlightened approach, and the guy is still just a violent sociopath.
It creates a fascinating thematic foundation for the rest of the story. On one side, you have the boundless optimism of the divine, the belief that any human soul, given the right shock to the system, can choose the path of righteousness.
And on the other side,
You have the grim, entrenched reality of a career criminal. Hua Yunlong's violence is no longer a conscious choice, It is hardwired into his nervous system. It's pure reflex.
right, so the text is making a larger argument about the immense, often insurmountable stubbornness of human nature, especially when it's pitted against outside forces of reform.
Exactly. The virtual reality scared straight program is a total catastrophic bust.
A complete failure. And because that divine rehabilitation failed so spectacularly, the narrative immediately plunges us right into the toxic fallout.
Right, because Hua Yunlong, with his knife drawn, is stalking toward this moving shadow in the dark forest.
But it turns out the shadow isn't a victim, and it isn't a monster. It's a man named Zhang Rong, whose underworld moniker is the Black Wind Ghost.
Such a great name. And Zhang Rong is actually Hua Yunlong's sworn brother.
Right.
So this chance meeting in the woods shifts our focus from the internal psychology of a single criminal to the broader social dynamics and networking of the criminal underworld.
And this interaction is incredible because it exposes the sheer, unadulterated hypocrisy of these villains.
It really does.
So Hua and the Black Wind Ghost have this bizarre reunion in the pitch-black woods. And Hua asks Zhang Rong, "What are you doing wandering around in the middle of the night?"
And Zhang Rong explains that he had been laying low, staying at the home of Yang Ming.
Right, but he packed up and left because Yang Ming was, quote, slow to show courtesy and said things that were not in accordance with etiquette.
Which is just so funny to hear from a hardened criminal.
I know. So Zhang Rong got deeply offended and stormed out into the night.
The language here is incredibly revealing, though. Courtesy. Etiquette. These are hardened outlaws, men who rob and kill for a living. Yet they govern their interpersonal relationships through this highly sensitive, deeply fragile honor system.
It's so strange to think about.
But you have to remember, in an underworld environment where criminals cannot rely on the state or the police to protect their property or enforce contracts, reputation and hospitality are their only currency.
Oh, that makes sense. Because Zhang Rong is a fugitive relying entirely on the protection of a safe house.
Exactly. And he abandons that safety simply because he felt his hosts didn't treat him with enough deference.
His feelings were hurt. It is so remarkably petty. Very petty. But this petty, fragile ego sets a massive, horrifying plot into motion. Because he stormed out of Yang Ming's house, Zhang Rong tells Hua Yunlong that he is now taking refuge at a place called the Lingxiao Temple.
Right, which is located up on Gutian Mountain, and he is staying there under the direct protection of Hua Yunlong's uncle, a man named Hua Qingfeng.
And we quickly learn that the Lingxiao Temple is not a quiet sanctuary for meditation, is it?
Not at all. It functions as a fortified magnet for the worst elements of the martial underworld who are currently fleeing from Jigong's justice.
It's basically an echo chamber for villains. Because Zhang Rong isn't the only fugitive hiding out there. He mentions that another major antagonist, a guy known as the Golden-Eyed Buddha Jiang Tianrui, recently arrived at the temple.
Yeah, and Jiang had a brutal run-in with Jigong over at the Iron Buddha Temple.
Right. Jigong completely dismantled Jiang's operation, captured the demons he was utilizing, and during the fight, Jiang Tianrui humiliatingly lost his beard.
Now, we need to pause on that. In this historical and cultural context, a man's beard was a profound symbol of his masculinity, his maturity, and his martial prestige.
So losing it in combat isn't just a physical injury.
No, it is a devastating, highly visible blow to his pride. He feels fundamentally disrespected.
So Jian Tianrui arrives at the Lingxiao temple, absolutely furious and deeply humiliated. He immediately starts complaining to Hua Qingfeng.
Who, by the way, is supposed to be a Taoist true man, an enlightened, holy figure.
Right, a supposedly holy man. And to sweeten the pot and convince the Taoists to help him get revenge, Jiang Qianrui gives this holy man a dark, forbidden, highly illegal text called the Yin Demon Precious Register.
The introduction of this text serves as the catalyst for a massive escalation.
It really does. Hua Qingfeng reads this dark manual and decides that the best way to extract revenge on Jigong for insulting his associates is to master a specific catastrophic spell.
Right, a spell known as the Five Ghosts Yin Wind Sword.
And if you are listening to this right now and thinking, oh, a magic sword, that sounds like a cool fantasy trope, you really need to brace yourself.
Yeah, it gets very dark here.
Because the mechanical requirements to forge this weapon are incredibly gruesome. To master this sword, this supposedly holy Taoist master doesn't just forge steel in a fire. He needs to physically cut open 5 living human beings, extract their warm hearts, and harness their dying souls.
There is no sanitizing this. It is ritualistic serial killing.
That's awful.
It represents the absolute darkest, most corrupt form of black magic conceivable within the moral framework of this universe.
And the Black Wind Ghost, Zhang Rong, the guy who was just complaining in the woods about people not showing him enough polite courtesy and etiquette.
Right. His assigned job in this operation is wandering the countryside, actively trying to trick, ambush, and kidnap 5 innocent people so he can drag them up the mountain to be butchered for their organs.
The contrast between their internal narrative and their external actions is just staggering. They actually view themselves as the aggrieved party.
They really do. And this brings us to a specific speech Zhang Rong gives to Hua Yunlong in the forest that I think is one of the most sociologically brilliant moments in the entire text.
I completely agree. It perfectly captures how insular groups justify their own atrocities.
Yes. This happens when Zhang Rong is trying to convince Hua Yunlong to come back to the temple with him.
Because Hua is hesitant, right?
Yeah.
He says, I'm on the run, the monk Jigong is hunting me down tightly, I don't want to bring heat to the temple.
And Zhang Rong dismisses this concern entirely. He says, come to the mountain, your uncle can protect you, he can even talk some sense into Jigong.
Right.
And to justify this, Zhang Rong quotes a philosophical rhyme. He says, monks praise monks, Buddhism prospers. The Tao is within the Tao, the mystery within the mystery. Red flowers, white lotus roots, and green lotus leaves. The 3 religions ultimately belong to one family.
And just for some context for you listening, the 3 religions he's referring to are Buddhism, Taoism, and Confucianism.
Right. And historically, this phrase, the 3 religions belonging to one family, is a classic, profoundly beautiful statement of spiritual syncretism in Chinese philosophy.
It's this idea that despite different dogmas, all true spiritual paths ultimately converge on the same universal truths. Right?
Exactly. It's a call for harmony and mutual respect among different faiths.
It's a gorgeous sentiment. But look at the mechanism of how Zhang Rong actually weaponizes it here.
It's so twisted.
He follows up this beautiful philosophical quote by saying, look, Jigong is a monk. He doesn't hold government office. He's not a public servant. You broke the secular laws of the state. What does that have to do with him as a religious figure?
Right.
He literally says, your uncle can just remind Jigong that since they're both spiritual men, he should look the other way.
They're literally hijacking high theology to create the framework for an organized crime syndicate.
It is mind-boggling hypocrisy. Think about the logic here. They are arguing that religious figures should extend professional courtesy to one another, forming an elite, untouchable class that gets to completely ignore the mundane laws of the government.
Yes, exactly.
Like, hey, Jigong, we're all men of the cloth here, so you shouldn't care if my buddy robbed a bank, and you definitely shouldn't care that my boss is currently trying to harvest 5 human hearts to make a ghost sword. Let's just keep the peace.
It's a masterclass in how corrupt institutions or extreme ideological factions or even criminal organizations co-opt noble language to shield themselves from accountability.
That is so true.
Inside the echo chamber of the Lingxiao temple, they are the victims. They are the ones who've been insulted, humiliated, and unfairly targeted by Jigong. The fact that they are plotting ritualistic mass murder is completely overwritten by their own towering sense of righteous indignation.
You've probably been in a corporate meeting or seen a political press conference where someone uses the company's core values or patriotic buzzwords to justify a terrible, selfish decision.
Oh, all the time.
That is exactly the psychological lever Zhang is pulling here. It's the ultimate victim blaming. Jigong is being so unspiritual and unreasonable by not letting us murder people in peace.
So Yunlong listens to this twisted logic and agrees that seeking sanctuary at the temple is a good idea. The echo chamber works.
But before he can go to the mountain, he faces a practical logistical problem.
Right. He tells Zhang Rong, I can go, but first, I need weapons.
Yeah. Hua relies entirely on poison darts for his martial arts style, and his pouches are completely empty after being on the run.
And this mundane logistical necessity, the need to rearm, drives him out of the dark woods and into civilization.
And this transition drops us into what is arguably the most suspenseful, psychologically rich sequence in the entire text.
I love this scene so much.
We are moving from the grand, delusional theology of the mountain into a hyper-realistic masterclass in social engineering at a local blacksmith shop.
The tonal shift here is just brilliant. We leave the dark forests, the Nanki dreams, and the discussions of black magic, and we walk right into a bright, bustling, incredibly grounded scene of medieval commerce.
The sun comes up. It's a bright new day. The two criminals walk to a place called Yunlong town. Zhang Rong, being the cautious one with a bounty on his head for kidnapping, waits at the edge of the village.
Smart move on his part.
While Hua Yilong walks alone to the main crossroads, turns east, and finds a large, prominent blacksmith shop called Wu Yu Zai.
And the text paints a very specific sensory picture of this shop. It has a wide 3-room storefront. The main sales counter is situated on the west side, and on the east side is a massive energial. 8 trigrams furnace radiating heat.
And standing out front is the owner of the shop. He's an older man, but the text describes him as having incredible, vibrant energy. Spirit 100-fold.
He's dressed very professionally, too. In a blue satin 4-cornered hat and a blue satin robe. He has a face as red as a heavy date, thick, intimidating eyebrows, big piercing eyes, and a graying beard.
He projects the aura of a man who is incredibly capable, deeply entrenched in his trade, and just generally not to be messed with.
So Hua Yunlong approaches this man to buy his signature weapons, and the granular details of this transaction are critical. The author uses these specifics to ground the narrative, making sure the reader understands this isn't some magical wand purchase. It's a highly technical, demanding business negotiation.
Yeah, Hua Yunlong walks up and asks for darts. But he doesn't just ask for a handful of pointy metal. He uses highly specific industry jargon.
Right.
He demands 2 Feng Zaliang darts, which translates roughly to weapons that are exceedingly sharp, brilliantly shiny, and forged to the highest possible tensile quality.
And the blacksmith confidently replies that he can forge them. Then Hua dictates his exact specifications.
Which are intense.
Very. In the martial underworld of this setting, 8 darts constitute a standard set, 6 is a half set, and 12 is a full, heavy set. Hua Yunlong orders a full set of 12 plus 1 extra, slightly heavier main dart to anchor his weapon pouch.
And he is borderline obsessive about the weight, isn't he?
Oh, completely. Every single one of those 12 darts must weigh exactly 3 taels and 3 mace.
For those of us who don't weigh things in taels, that's about 125 grams, or roughly 1/4 pound per dart. He knows the exact required physics of his weaponry. If a dart is even slightly off weight, it affects his throwing trajectory. And in his line of work, a missed throw means death. He demands absolute precision.
And the old blacksmith doesn't flinch at the demanding order. He says, I have some ready-made ones in the back that might be a bit heavy at the tip, but if you want these exact, customized specifications, my apprentice can fire up the furnace and make them fresh for you right now.
But he warns Hua that a rush job of this quality is going to be expensive.
Yes, it will cost 6 taels of silver for the base materials and labor, plus an extra 2 tael silver tip, referred to as wine money, to expedite the forging process.
To put that in perspective for you, 8 taels of silver is a massive amount of money for a quick transaction in a rural town. A peasant might live on a fraction of that for months. But Hua Yunlong, being a highly successful and ruthless criminal, essentially thinks a few taels of silver is pocket change. And he agrees to the exorbitant price without even haggling.
He just wants his weapons perfectly balanced so he can get out of town and get back to the safety of the mountain. But this is exactly where the narrative tension slowly, agonizingly begins to build.
Because the blacksmith invites Hua Yunlong inside the shop, bringing him over to the west counter to sit down.
Right. And the old man pulls out a sample dart from under the counter to show him the quality of their work.
Hua weighs the sample in his hand and says, "It's a bit heavy at the tip. It might wobble in flight."
And the old man just smiles and says, "No problem, just sit and wait a bit. We'll forge your exact measurements."
And then the old man executes a move that is so bold, it's almost terrifying.
I love this part.
He calls his young apprentice over to the counter and says, in a loud, clear voice, "Go outside and fetch a pot of tea for our guest. The furnace fire isn't quite lit yet. Go fetch some fresh water."
But then, the text explicitly notes what happens next. The old man leans over the counter and whispers something completely unintelligible directly into the young apprentice's ear.
Yes.
The apprentice simply nods, turns around, and practically sprints out the door.
Okay, wait. I was practically screaming at the text when I read this. I really need to map this out because it almost defies logic.
It does seem that way at first.
Hua Yunlong is a highly paranoid, seasoned fugitive. He knows he has a massive bounty on his head. He is currently on the run from a magical supermug who just trapped him in a terrifying nightmare.
Right.
Literally, just a few hours ago, he was so jumpy and high-strung that he drew a knife on a bush in the woods. He is operating at maximum threat alert.
Exactly.
So why, when he sits down in a strange town and sees a merchant blatantly whisper a secret message to an employee and send him running out the door under the flimsy guise of getting water, does he not immediately realize he is being stalled? Why doesn't his survival instinct kick in? Why doesn't he just run?
It's a brilliant question, and the answer lies in the mechanics of human psychology.
Really? Explain that.
The old blacksmith doesn't try to fight Hua Yunlong's paranoia head-on. He bypasses it completely by targeting a much deeper, more vulnerable system, which is Hua's vanity. The blacksmith is executing a flawless social engineering attack.
It's exactly like a modern corporate spearphishing scam.
That's a great way to think about it.
Think about how hackers breach massive, multi-billion-dollar companies. They don't try to brute force their way through the company's impenetrable cybersecurity firewalls. That's too difficult.
No, they find a back door.
Exactly. They write an email tailored specifically to the CEO's ego. They send an invitation to an exclusive, prestigious gala or a fake award nomination. The CEO's vanity is stroked, their guard drops, and they click the malicious link, opening the door from the inside.
The blacksmith isn't fighting Hua's paranoia, he is actively hacking his vanity. That is the perfect analogy for the mechanism at play here.
It just blew my mind when I realized that's what was happening.
So the old man sits down with Hua Yunlong to keep him company while they wait for the furnace, and he starts asking very polite, deferential, seemingly innocent questions. He asks, "So what exactly do you do for a living that requires such high-end weaponry?"
And Hua Yunlong lies. He claims he's a professional bodyguard. In the context of this medieval setting, a bodyguard is a private security escort for merchant caravans. It is the respectable, legal, above-board version of a martial artist.
Right, as opposed to a bandit who robs those same caravans.
Exactly.
And as soon as Hua claims this respectable professional identity, the old man sets the hook. He says, "Oh, if you're a professional bodyguard in this business, I'd love to ask you about a few famous people. Do you happen to know them?"
And Hua, full of bravado and desperate to project authority, replies, "If they have a name, I know them. If they are nameless, I know them too."
He literally cannot resist the urge to sound like a big shot. It's the classic trap of the ego.
So the old man starts methodically dropping names. And he doesn't just list random thugs. He systematically maps out the absolute elite martial arts network of the entire surrounding region.
Effectively building a geographical cage of names around Hua.
Right. He starts in the south. Do you know the Southern Route bodyguard? The man they called the cloud-chasing Swallow Huang Yun.
And Hua puffs out his chest and says, "Of course I know him."
Then the old man pivots. What about the north? Do you know the Northern Route bodyguard? The beautiful bearded Lord Chen Shao? Or the disease god Yang Meng?
Hua leans in even further and brags, "Those men are my own sworn brothers."
The blacksmith just keeps weaving the web. East, west, center. He lists the invincible Iron Staff Chen Shengguan in the east. He lists the Iron Head Tai Sui Zhu Kun in the west. He mentions the Divine Sword General Li Heng.
And finally, he brings it to the center, asking about the Central Route bodyguard, the great righteous hero awing 8 directions Yang Ming.
Which is the exact same Yang Ming that his buddy Zhang Rong was just complaining about in the woods for having bad etiquette.
Exactly. And Hua Yunlong smiles and says, "Oh, Yang Ming. He's definitely no outsider. We are very well acquainted."
This is where we see the absolute genius of the blacksmith's psychological manipulation. The old man isn't just making idle small talk to pass the time. He is verbally constructing a VIP lounge, and he is inviting Hua Yunlong to sit at the best table.
Right. By dropping these legendary names, the old man is implicitly telling Hua, I recognize that you are a man of profound consequence. You walk among the titans of our world.
I want you, listening right now, to think about the last time someone recognized and complimented you on your highly specific professional expertise. Think about how that feels.
It feels great.
It immediately drops your guard, right? You feel a sudden kinship with that person because they get it. They see your value. That is exactly the psychological lever the blacksmith is pulling on Hua Yunlong.
And Hua is eating it up. His ego is being stroked so gently and so expertly that the dopamine hit completely overrides his deeply ingrained survival instincts.
He feels entirely validated.
He feels seen as a powerful insider. The text uses a great phrase. Hua views himself as famous enough to know, not an outsider.
Oh, that's good.
And this towering arrogance completely blinds him to the mechanical reality of the trap that is being built around him while they sip the tea the apprentice finally brought back.
It raises such a fascinating point about how we perceive vulnerabilities. We tend to assume that seasoned criminals or highly paranoid individuals are impenetrable because they are always looking for a physical threat.
Right, we think they're untouchable.
But this scene proves that arrogance is the ultimate unpatchable blind spot. Hua Yunlong feels so superior, so deeply comfortable in his fabricated identity as a big-name player in the martial underworld, that he cannot fathom this random, rural, elderly blacksmith outsmarting him.
He really thinks he's playing the old man by pretending to be a legal bodyguard. He's completely unaware that the old man is playing him flawlessly.
The suspense is exquisite because the reader possesses all the dramatic irony. You know the apprentice didn't go for water. You know the names are a stalling tactic. You were just waiting for the hammer to fall.
And finally, it does. The apprentice returns, and the fresh, custom-forged darts are brought out. Hua inspects them, testing the 125-gram weight, and he's satisfied.
But before he can leave, the old man says, "Why don't you try throwing them? I have a spacious private courtyard out back, specifically designed for martial arts practice."
He is guiding the target perfectly step by step into a confined kill zone.
It's chilling. So the old man leads Hua to the back courtyard. It's described as a wide, enclosed space surrounded by high walls with a dirt floor that has been deliberately packed down hard for practicing martial arts forms.
And Hua Yunlong looks around the space feeling completely at ease. He even says, "Oh, you must practice martial arts too, old man. This is a great spot."
He is totally relaxed, his weapons in hand, his ego fully inflated.
And that is the exact millisecond the jaws of the trap snap shut.
Because before Hua Yunlong can even finish complimenting the courtyard's dirt floor, the sounds of heavy boots and clashing weapons erupt from all sides.
The heavy wooden back doors of the courtyard are violently kicked open. The illusion of the VIP lounge evaporates instantly.
Two terrifying figures burst into the enclosed courtyard, completely blocking the only exit. These are not local street thugs. These are professional, state-sanctioned lawmen. Constables.
And the text takes its time describing them to emphasize the physical threat they pose. The first one through the door is a young man, described as 8 feet tall, wearing a feathered hat and tight, highly functional martial arts clothing designed for pursuit.
Right.
His face is described as black gold paper shining through the black, with heroic eyebrows and tiger-like eyes. His name is Zhou Rui, and his underworld nickname is the Little Black Altar.
And right on his heels is his partner, Luo Biao, known as the red-faced tiger. His face is described as red, like red charcoal blowing ash, purple showing through the red, with thick, aggressive eyebrows and large eyes. And they aren't alone. They're backed up by a swarm of other armed officers flooding the perimeter.
They storm into the courtyard brandishing iron rulers.
Now, iron rulers, that's not for measuring.
No. In this historical context, an iron ruler is a heavy, unsharpened iron truncheon used specifically by law enforcement. It's meant to shatter bones, disarm opponents, and subdue suspects without necessarily killing them so they can be interrogated.
They level these iron bone breakers at Hua Yunlong and scream, "Good Hua Yunlong, where do you think you're going? You dare to commit armed robbery in broad daylight and break out of jail. Today you will not escape the law."
It's an incredibly satisfying payoff to the unbearable tension built inside the blacksmith's shop. The social engineering worked flawlessly. The villain has been outsmarted and cornered by the authorities.
But this is where the narrative pulls the rug out from under us. There's a massive twist in this scene. a twist that elevates this from a standard, satisfying action sequence into a brilliant, cynical piece of social commentary on the mechanics of justice.
Right, because the narrator essentially breaks the fourth wall here, pausing the action to deliver a crucial piece of information directly to the reader.
The text plainly states, Hua Yunlong, however, had not committed any crimes in this place.
Which is just a brilliant reveal.
Wait, I really need to process this. Hua Yunlong is a known fugitive. He associates with black magic cultists trying to harvest human organs. He is a terrible, violent person who absolutely deserves to be arrested.
Yes, all true.
But the text is telling us that he is entirely 100% innocent of the specific crimes these constables are currently screaming at him about.
Yes, it is the ultimate dramatic irony. He is the right bad guy, but for completely the wrong reasons.
Okay, I have to form a hypothesis here. If Hua didn't commit the armed robbery in this town, how did the cops find him? Were they tracking his movements from another county? Was there an APB out on him? Or is there some broken, dysfunctional mechanism in the local legal system that is driving this specific ambush?
It is entirely the latter. The ambush has absolutely nothing to do with precise detective work and everything to do with the deeply stressed, highly punitive mechanics of the imperial bureaucracy.
So it's systemic?
Completely. The text pauses the standoff to explain the backstory of these two constables, Zuru and Luo Biao. They work under the direct command of the magistrate of Chongshan County, which holds jurisdiction over this town of Yunlong.
The magistrate being the highest-ranking local government official, responsible for everything from tax collection to criminal trials.
Correct. And this particular magistrate is brand new to the job. In the imperial system, a new magistrate is under immense pressure from the provincial governors above him to prove his competence immediately. Any sign of lawlessness reflects poorly on his ability to govern.
And things are not going well for him, are they?
No, unfortunately for him, things in Changshan County are rapidly spiraling out of control.
Right. The text details two horrific, entirely unsolved crimes that have just occurred in his jurisdiction. First, there was a brazen armed robbery at a prominent pawn shop near the South Gate, where the perpetrators severely wounded the staff with blades and made off with the goods.
And second,
There was a brutal, fatal highway robbery just outside the East Gate, where a young woman and her carriage driver were murdered, and all their silver, jewelry, and clothing were stripped and stolen.
these are major, violently disruptive crimes that threaten the economic stability of the region, and the local police have absolutely nothing. The text explicitly states their predicament. First, no murderer. Second, no witnesses. They are at a complete, humiliating dead end.
So, the magistrate is facing a massive crisis of competence. His superiors are going to demand answers. So what does he do? He calls in his two top detectives, Zurui and Luo Biao. And these guys are elite. They are described as having the physical prowess to fly over eaves and walk on walls.
But the magistrate doesn't give them forensics. He doesn't give them clues or more resources or time to investigate. He gives them an ultimatum. He issues a formal, legally binding decree. I am giving you a limit of 10 days. If you catch the criminals within this time frame, you will be rewarded with 100 taels of silver.
We really need to pause and look at the economics of that reward. Remember, Hua Yunlong just spent 8 taels for a highly customized, master-crafted set of weapons, and that was considered a small fortune.
Right.
100 taels of silver is life-changing, generational wealth for a working-class constable. It's the ultimate carrot.
But the stick is just as massive. The magistrate follows up the reward by stating, if you exceed this 10-day time limit and do not capture the culprits, you will definitely be heavily punished.
And let's be clear about what heavily punished means in the context of the historical justice system. It doesn't mean they get a bad performance review or get demoted to desk duty.
No, failing a mandate from a magistrate typically resulted in brutal physical torture. The constables would be stripped and beaten with heavy bamboo canes in a public setting.
That is horrifying.
This punishment frequently resulted in permanent crippling injuries, public humiliation, the immediate loss of their livelihood, and potentially starvation for their families.
So, if we synthesize all of this, the towering, aggressive lawmen who just kicked down the courtyard doors to arrest our villain are not acting out of a noble pursuit of truth.
Not at all.
They're not executing a precise forensic mandate of justice. They are acting out of pure, unadulterated, terror-induced panic. The timer on their 10-day limit is up, and they're about to be beaten.
This scene is a masterclass in showcasing how administrative pressure from the top deeply distorts policing on the ground. The magistrate doesn't care about the truth. He cares about closing the case file so he doesn't look incompetent to the governor.
He intentionally creates a pressure cooker environment.
Exactly. And when you give armed police officers an impossible deadline, zero evidence, and the very real threat of physical mutilation if they fail, how do you expect them to behave?
They're going to go out into the street and grab the very first suspicious-looking, heavily armed outsider they can find, and they're going to force him to take the fall.
Precisely. They are no longer executing justice. They are managing their own survival. They get a tip from the blacksmith that a strange, arrogant man with a criminal demeanor is ordering highly customized, lethal weapons in town.
And they don't even investigate it.
No, they don't investigate. They don't look for the stolen jewelry. They simply decide, that's him. That's our pawn shop robber. That's our murderer. Case closed.
It is incredibly profound. Hua Yunlong is guilty of 1,000 horrific things. He deserves to be in a cell. But in this specific moment, standing in this specific dirt courtyard, he's actually the victim of mistaken identity and a deeply corrupt, quota-driven legal system.
Right. He just happens to be the unlucky, arrogant guy left holding the bag when the timer ran out on the local cops.
It reveals a deeply cynical yet historically grounded view of how bureaucratic justice systems actually function under stress. It wasn't about the moral alignment of finding the true perpetrator. It was about feeding a warm body into the machinery of the state to appease the hierarchy.
The fact that the constables happened to catch an actual wanted outlaw is just a cosmic, highly ironic coincidence. The system is designed to produce scapegoats, not justice.
It's chaotic. It's messy. It is the exact opposite of that clean, engineered precision we associate with modern, idealized justice. It's just terrified people manipulating each other to survive.
That's a great way to put it.
And speaking of the nature of violence, I want to transition to how the author structures this narrative, because the author doesn't let us linger in the irony of the courtyard. So in the town, we see how the systemic pressure of civilization creates this quiet, ironic, corrupt form of violence, where a blacksmith uses tea and flattery as a weapon, and cops arrest people out of administrative panic.
Right, a very civilized violence.
But if you step outside the city walls, civilization strips away completely, and you are left with something entirely different. The text suddenly rips us away from the town and drops us into the pure, honest brutality of the rural wilderness.
Which brings us to the final sequence of our excerpt, introducing the blunt force of the classic, unvarnished bandit.
Just down the road from Singalong Town is a geographical feature called Evil Tiger Mountain. And I just have to say, if you are traveling with a caravan of valuable goods and your map says you are approaching Evil Tiger Mountain, you should probably take the long way around.
It is not a subtle name, and it serves as a massive neon sign warning the reader of what is about to happen.
We cut abruptly to two entirely new characters, men named Ma Jun and Xingjiang. They're traveling back from the city of Linen, and they are leading donkeys heavily loaded with trade goods.
And they are currently navigating the rough terrain at the base of Evil Tiger Mountain when suddenly a frantic, terrified man comes sprinting down the road toward them. He's screaming for help, yelling that a massive robbery is taking place just up the path.
Ma Jun is described as a bold, martial character who isn't easily intimidated. He tells the fleeing man to fall in behind him, and Ma Jun rides forward up the mountain path to investigate the disturbance.
And what Ma Jun sees blocking the road is the absolute distilled essence of a wuxia bandit trope. The text takes great pleasure in describing this antagonist in vivid, terrifying detail to contrast him with the subtle threats we just saw in the town.
Oh, this guy is a monster.
This bandit is a giant, standing 9 feet tall. His shoulders are incredibly broad. He is dressed for mobility and violence, wearing a blue headscarf, a tight blue Marshall jacket, and thin-soled boots.
His face is described as looking like blade iron, completely covered in unnerving white spots, with a stiff, bristly beard jutting out.
But the most important detail is his weapon. He isn't using concealed poison darts like Hua Yunlong or the non-lethal iron rulers of the constables. He is wielding a massive ghost head knife.
A ghost head knife.
Right, this is a classic, heavy, profoundly brutal, chopping weapon characterized by a ringed, heavy back and a wide blade. It is a weapon favored by executioners and mountain bandits because it doesn't require precision, it requires sheer, overwhelming brute force.
It is the ultimate blunt instrument. But here is the detail that I found absolutely fascinating. When the giant bandit sees Ma Jun approach, he doesn't just charge forward swinging his giant knife in a berserker rage.
No, he doesn't.
He does something highly formalized. He steps to the center of the road, levels his massive ghost head knife, and at the top of his lungs, he recites a poem.
It is a very specific, highly traditional bandit poem that appears throughout classic Chinese vernacular literature. It functions almost like a legal disclaimer or a localized tax declaration.
The bandit shouts, "This place I hold as lord to rob those on the road. If you wish to pass this way, leave your road buying silver or die. You stray sheep and lone geese across from me, leave your silver and I will spare your lives. Otherwise, escaping with your lives will be harder than ascending to heaven."
If we look closely at the language, the bandit is engaging in a highly theatrical, formalized ritual. He is announcing his dominance over the geography. This place I hold as lord. He is stating his terms of business, leave the road buying silver, which is essentially a toll.
And he is offering a clear transactional choice, right? Pay the toll and live, or fight and die.
Exactly.
Why does a bandit recite a poem, though? It feels so counterintuitive to a violent mugging.
Well, when you think about it, it's a branding exercise. It's a formalized ritual meant to establish absolute psychological dominance before physical violence is even necessary. It is terrifying because of how routine and rehearsed it is.
Intimidation through formality.
Exactly. And if we contrast these two simultaneous events, the town and the mountain, it showcases the incredible literary range of the author and the thematic depth of the world they've built.
It really does. I mean, think about the cognitive whiplash we just experienced as readers. On one hand, inside the walls of civilization, you have this quiet, tea-sipping, deeply psychological warfare.
Right, the blacksmith.
An old blacksmith uses flattery and the complex, invisible social networks of the martial arts underworld to quietly trap a paranoid fugitive. The violence there is systemic, it's tense, and it's dripping with irony because the police are arresting the right man for entirely the wrong crime just to fulfill a bureaucratic quota.
It feels incredibly modern in its psychological complexity. It's a chess match played with egos and administrative terror.
Yes. And then literally on the very next page, the author drags us out of the city and throws us back into the most blunt force traditional archetype imaginable.
The 9-foot giant standing on a mountain named Evil Tiger Mountain, holding a giant executioner's sword, literally reciting poetry about how he is going to hack you to pieces if you don't pay his toll.
It is loud, it is honest, and there is zero irony or deception involved. He wants your money or he wants your life.
The author is utilizing these contrasting scenes to maintain incredible narrative momentum. You are simultaneously reading a tense psychological thriller and a blockbuster action movie happening concurrently in the same fictional universe.
It's so well crafted.